Welcome back to my channel. I'm Farah if you're new here, and today is the start of a new reading vlog. So we only have a couple days left in March, so this is basically just going to be my April reading vlog, I would guess. And yeah, to start out, I guess I'll just share with you guys some of the things that I'm currently reading. So let's see, in my last vlog you would have seen I finished a bunch of stuff and I did start some new books. So the books that I'm currently reading right now are on audio. I'm reading this book called 1, 2, 3 by Laurie Frankel, and this is just a kind of general fiction novel. I don't know exactly what genre it is, but I think it's just general fiction. It tells a story actually from the perspective of 3 16-year-old triplets named Mab, Monday, and Mirabelle, who live in this town called Bourne. We're not really told where exactly it is, but I'm guessing it's maybe somewhere in New England or maybe that area. But there's something going on with this town, something that happened in the past where it left the people really sick. A lot of people ended up developing cancer. A lot of people gave birth to kids with birth defects, and it all is being tied to, theoretically, to this chemical plant that had opened in their town that was leaking this dangerous chemical or pesticide into their water. And so it's 20 years later, after the events of this happened, and the 3 girls are 16. Their mom, Nora, she lost her husband, their dad, to cancer. And she's been involved in a class action lawsuit against this chemical company to try to find a way to bring justice to what happened to this town. The story is being told with 3 different points of views. We have Mab, she's considered like the really smart, pretty, kind of like average teenage girl. There's nothing super unique about her. She's really smart. She has friends. She's studying for the SATs. She tutors after school, and we hear her voice. And then we have Monday, who is the second triplet, and she is our neurodivergent on the spectrum character, and she has such a fun voice. I love her voice actor. I love how she perceives the world and the thoughts that she comes through with, and her little peculiarities and her tendencies and her preferences. She's just a really, really interesting character, and I really love how she's being portrayed. And then we have Mirabelle, who's the third sister, and she was born with some physical disabilities where she's unable to walk. So she's in a wheelchair. I think she's able to use one of her arms, but she's not able to speak other than certain vocalizations that she can make. So she has a speech accessory device that she can use to communicate, but we are given her full perspective, her full voice, which is a really, really interesting perspective. So right away, just three really different and unique characters that we're hearing this story being told through. So then one day, this moving van shows up in their town, and that never happens. People don't come to this town. They don't generally leave. Everything is wheelchair accessible because the average person has disabilities. So in reality, Mab, the first twin, who doesn't have any sort of physical or emotional disabilities, she's actually considered one of the minorities there. So I love that right away. But anyway, this family comes to move into the town, and it turns out to be relatives of the original owners who had the plant. So we're just trying to figure out what's going on. Why are they there? It turns out they're going to be reopening this plant, and the townspeople are horrified. And so we're kind of on this little mystery sort of journey to bring justice to this town. It's got that Aaron Brockovich vibe to it. So the book itself is pretty good. I think the writing is really, really good. The story itself doesn't have a ton of plot going on though. So I'm about halfway through the book, and it's a slow one, you guys. It's really slow. It's not something that I'm really like looking forward to turning on to listen to, but once I do get going with it, I enjoy it. It just doesn't have a ton of plot going on. It's really interesting character study though, and I am interested in the characters. So yeah, so just about halfway through that book. And I also started on my Kindle. I'm trying to finish out the middle grade series, The Chronicles of Narnia. So last year I read, I think 4 of the books, 4 or 5. I can't remember. I think there's 6 books in the series. I have 2 more to go. So yeah, I am on The Last Battle. And then I also have The Magician's Nephew. I heard that The Magician's Nephew is one of the better books, so I'm saving that for my last one. So right now I'm reading, again, The Last Battle. So this takes place years and years after the original 4 kids go to Narnia, and we focus on this prince, like the last prince of Narnia called King Tyrion. And the story itself is really weird. It opens up with these 2 characters. There's an ape and a donkey, and they see this lion skin or fur just like floating in the river. So they kind of come up with this scheme to dress the donkey up in the lion's fur and pretend that he's Aslan to get the people of Narnia and Calamarin to do whatever they want. So that's kind of where we are. The King Tyrion, he sort of calls them out on it, and he gets tied up and captured, and he asks and prays for help, and then 2 of the kids are sent back to Narnia to help him. So that's kind of where we are with that. Again, it's a story that I generally do enjoy, so I don't mind picking that up. I usually read it before bed because it's like kind of a nice, easy thing to read before I fall asleep. So yeah, interested to see how this story goes. And then after that, I'll be reading The Magician's Nephew to finish out that series for once and for all. So that's what I've been reading on my Kindle. And then physically, I'm also reading 2 different books. So I'm doing a buddy read with my brother on this book. It's part of the Star Wars franchise, and this is The High Republic. This is book 1 in the series called Light of the Jedi. And I'm really just 2 chapters in, so I don't have too much to say about this so far, but it's already pretty interesting. The chapters are nice and short, so I am enjoying picking this up. And we're just reading like a chapter or 2 per day just to, enjoy it and to talk about it with each other. So I come from a huge family of Star Wars fans, so I absolutely love the movies, and I've been interested in getting into some of the novels and some of the backstories and characters that we don't normally see. So we get to know a few characters, and then stuff happens to them right away. So yeah, I don't want to give too much about this. So yeah, I'll definitely check in more with this as I continue with the story. And then the second book I'm reading is a book called Layla by Colleen Hoover. And this one I picked up from my local library last week. I was in there just waiting for my daughter to get done with her softball practice. So I did pick up a couple different books, even though I have so many books that I need to focus on and read for my own TBR. I just couldn't resist So Colleen Hoover, I actually have never heard of before this past year. I noticed her on the Goodreads list of like nominations, and then I heard a few people talking about her, but I've never read her. She's never been on my radar. So when I saw this book at the library, I decided to give it a shot. It's under 300 pages, so it's not super long. And actually, I'm really enjoying this so far. It's really weird. I don't know where they're going with it, but it focuses on these two characters so far named Layla and Leeds. And it's told in the guy's point of view. So we have Leeds, and he is basically he's in a wedding band. So he's a bass player in a wedding band, and they happen to play at Layla's sister's wedding. And he notices her dancing, and after the wedding they meet and they have an instant connection. They're really attracted to each other. They just really like electric sparks fly, and they fall in love. And a few months later, this tragic, awful accident happens to Layla, and she recovers, but she's left really emotionally scarred with a lot of stress and anxiety, and her personality starts to change a lot from how she was in the beginning. So Leeds, he's been taking care of her and they still really love each other, but things are really different. So they decide to take a trip back to the place where her sister got married, because Leeds is possibly considering buying it. This place used to be a bed and breakfast, but it recently went up for sale. So they rented it out for 2 weeks, and they're on like a tiny little vacation just to try to relax and reconnect and just, get to know each other again. So once they get to this house, all these weird things start happening. Things that can't really easily be explained. Like, for instance, Layla goes upstairs to take a quick nap, and Leeds decides to make dinner. So he fills up a pot of water and he starts cooking this soup or whatever it was he's making. Then he hears her scream, so he runs upstairs, and she said that the mirror had shattered and there's blood all over her hands, but she doesn't know what happened. And then he hears a crash downstairs, and he runs downstairs, and the soup is on the floor. There's a smoke coming from everywhere. There's a burnt rag that must have caught fire in the sink, and the faucet is on. So he's wondering if there's some paranormal stuff going on. He doesn't really believe in that, but he's really kind of confused as to what's happening. And a few more things like that keep happening that he can't explain. So he ends up buying these security cameras to install to see what's going on. And Layla's behavior is starting to get a little bit more strange as well. So he doesn't know if she's doing stuff or if there's something paranormal. And it's also told in a dual timeline though. So right in the beginning of the book is set up where Leeds is being interviewed by somebody, and he's kind of telling us this story as it's unfolding. So it's a weird situation. It's really strange at first. I can see how it can be a little bit triggering in terms of it. Right in literally the first sentence or so, it appears that he has Layla like kidnapped her basically. She's tied to a bed and duct taped over her mouth, and we have no idea why. So that's can be a little bit off-putting if that you're very sensitive to that. So that's been really interesting. I'm excited to get through that. I also ended up getting an Agatha Christie book out from the library, which I hope to get started when I'm done with this. And then I also have the second book in the, what's it called? The Dark Compass? My Dark Materials, the Golden Compass series. So I read the Golden Compass last year and I loved it, and I got the second book out for that. So Chronicles of Narnia, the Golden Compass are two middle grade series that I really want to finish this year. So I've kind of made them a priority. So those are my updates for now. Again, it is just about the end of March. It is snowing again outside. The wind is blowing. We're having like a really weird blizzardy moment right now. So we'll see. The snow is almost just about melted today when I was outside for a walk, but as we know, that doesn't last. But I did see that the tulips and daffodils are starting to poke through, so hopefully spring is coming. It usually happens like that for us. One day it's winter, one day it's spring, so we'll see. But I hope you guys are having a good reading month so far.
Get over here.
Hey guys, good morning. I just want to give you a quick reading update. I finished 2 books this week, so I just wanted to chat about them really quickly while they're still fresh in my mind. So the first book I finished was my audiobook, which was called 1, 2, 3 by Laurie Frankel. And this book, I don't really know what to say about it, to be honest. I thought that the type of story was good. The overall message was pretty good, but I didn't really like it. And I feel really bad saying that. This is my first time reading this particular author. And I know she had a couple really popular books prior to that people really rave about that I might check out. But overall, this book just didn't really work for me. I thought the pacing was really rough. It just felt like nothing was happening. I don't know. It was like, so we're being told by 3 different perspectives, 3 different sisters. They're 16-year-old triplets. They're all very different. But because it's being told by 3 different people, I feel like we kept getting the same thing being retold by each sister. So that got really repetitive. I felt like it was really, really overwritten. Like, just the same things talked about over and over and over and over and over. And it was just, I don't know, it was a bit boring for me. I will say that. The audio, I don't really recommend, unfortunately. I feel like that was a big hit or miss for me. So maybe if I had physically read it, I might have had a different experience. But the best part of the audio was the voice acting by the second sister, Monday. She was the neurodivergent on the spectrum sister. And I thought that the voice actor who did her did an amazing job. I really, really loved how she portrayed that character. But the voice acting for sister number 1, Mab, I just did not really like. Her voice, I don't know, I felt like she overacted quite a bit. She was like breathy and just felt like on the verge of crying half the time, really dramatic, which I guess for a teenager that can actually be quite accurate. But she also yelled a lot. So it just, listening to this while I was doing the dishes and just hearing her yelling and like swearing, I was like, I don't really know. I'm not in the mood for this. And then the third sister, Mirabelle, even though I loved her character, again, the voice acting just didn't really hit it for me. Her voice felt much older than a 16-year-old would feel. But one thing I really did like is how they portrayed or generated her speech activating device, which was her real voice in the outside world. So with the use of special effects, I really liked how they did that. I thought it was really cool. But overall, her inner voice, like her narrative voice, I don't know. We got a lot of the mom's perspective through her, which was great, but just like the overall story was just, I don't know. I don't really recommend this book, but if the overall premise, this Aaron Brockovich type vibe, is something that you're interested in, I recommend picking up the regular book and not the audiobook. But I don't know. Look at reviews, I guess. And then the second book I finished was also kind of a miss for me. This was my first Colleen Hoover book called Layla. I finished this last night, and honestly, I don't know what to think about this. This just really rubbed me the wrong way. So we have Leeds, who's the main character, whose point of view we have. It's told in the first person point of view. It's sort of a dual timeline. So we're getting the present day situation, which is only about 2 weeks in the future. And then we're flashing back to all the events leading up to what's going on. So this book is really hard to describe without getting into spoilers, but I'll just say that we follow these 2 characters, Leeds and Layla. They meet during her sister's wedding. They fall in love really quickly at this bed and breakfast. They fall in love hard and fast, and they just really are, that quintessential soulmate, like instant connection. Then something happens to Layla about 2 months later, and she suffers a traumatic brain injury, basically. So her behavior becomes really different. Her personality changes. She's full of stress and anxiety and PTS, and Leeds is having a hard time coping with her. So they're both in their, I would say mid to early 20s. So they're not really that old. I'll give them that as in terms of the character stuff going on later. The paranormal elements were really cool in the beginning. I couldn't put it down. It was really interesting. But once we got into the actual story and what was happening, and we start to see Lloyd's behavior and the choices that he makes, it was just hard for me to read. I just found his character to be really selfish, to be really just manipulative, gaslighting. And he calls himself out on it though, which is interesting. He knows the whole time that his behavior is really bad and inexcusable and bordering on emotional abuse, but he keeps doing it and he keeps making these choices. So it was interesting to see how she, you know, writing from a woman's perspective of a man's character doing this to another woman. It was interesting that she did acknowledge that within the character, but it never, for me, there's not a satisfying arc within the end of the story. It just keeps going on and keeps going on. And again, I can't really say what's happening because I don't want to give away spoilers, but I didn't feel like the twist or the overall final situation really justified his actions, because he was doing this without knowing what the actual situation was. So to me, that was still inexcusable. It was just an uncomfortable read. I just didn't like his character. So there just wasn't enough about either of their characters, Leeds or Layla, to really justify why they were so in love with each other. I wasn't emotionally connected with either one of them. And so I just felt that the story kind of fell flat for me. I know there's a lot of people that really liked this book, and there's a lot of people that really didn't like this book. So I think it's one of those polarizing books that you'll have to check out for yourself. But overall, it's really hard to say, because the pacing was great. The pacing was really great. I flew through this. I didn't feel bored by it. And the writing wasn't too bad either. So I know she's a great writer. She's really popular. And her writing wasn't bad. It wasn't like phenomenal, but it wasn't bad. I think it was just the overall characters and the amount of emotional abuse, which turned to physical later on, and the gaslighting and the quote, you know, adultery, cheating that was going on in a sense. I just didn't like it too much. But definitely, if you're a Colleen Hoover fan, check it out. I'd be interested if anybody has read this on what their thoughts are. I know it can be taken in many different perspectives, and that's just my perspective from a nursing point of view as well, because when dealing with TBIs, I felt like, or traumatic brain injuries, I felt that like they really took away from the reality of a TBI, and he was just focused on getting back to the perfect situation, and that's just not life. It's not realistic. So, ugh. I didn't like this book, unfortunately, but I will give it a 3 because the pacing was great and the writing was good. So now I'm kind of at a standstill. So for audio, I'm still working through Dragonflies in Amber. What is it called? Dragonfly in Amber. That's a really long audiobook, so I don't know if I'm going to squeeze in any more audiobooks in between that. I have a few coming in from the library though, so I probably should get to those. But yeah, I just wanted to give you guys an update. Again, if you've read either of those books I just talked about, I would love to know your thoughts below. So the little bulbs I planted this fall are coming up. I'm so excited. So we just have some daffodils and tulips. I don't remember what colors I planted, so that'll be fun just to see when those start opening up. I need to clean up back here, but I guess a bunch popped up back there. I don't even remember putting them there. Maybe they spread because I did have some daffodils last year. And yeah, so it is Easter morning. It is beautiful out. A little chilly, but it's sunny and there's no wind. And we just had a little Easter egg hunt out here, which was fun. And yeah, now we're getting ready to go to my mother-in-law's for Easter brunch. Well guys, it is a beautiful day. Gorgeous, super warm, birds are everywhere. There's a woodpecker up there. Knocking away. There's birds flying around, and I have exciting news. I've just finished finally the Old Testament of the Bible. This took me so long to get through. This is part of my reading the greatest 100 books of all time. I forget what number this is on the list, but I'm still on 100. The last, I'm working my way backwards, but I knew I wanted to kind of get started with the Bible so that I wouldn't have to read the whole thing like as one book in one setting. That would be too hard. So I finally finished the Old Testament, and it took me over a year. So here I am. One thing I was really surprised about is that the Old Testament is like over 75% of the entire Bible. I never realized that. I thought it was more even. So New Testament is what I have left. I'm going to take a break for a while on this and come back to it. But yeah, I just wanted to share because if you've been following my channel, you know I've been working on this for a while. But yeah, stay tuned. Now I have to go back to work. I was just on my lunch break, unfortunately. Hey guys, it is gorgeous out. I'm taking a quick walk right after work, and remember, I don't know if this was last week's video or I don't remember if I said this in this vlog or the previous one, but the telltale sign of spring is the return of the peepers, and if you can hear them, they're here. They're loud, little frogs everywhere. I don't know if you guys just heard that, but that was one of those wood grouses, and they beat their wings in this rhythm, and it's got to have something to do with mating, I think, or territory, but it's so deep you can feel it in your chest when the wings are fluttering like that. It's so cool. I'm so happy. I'm so happy. It is super nice out. Oh my gosh. It's like 70 degrees, sunny. Birds are back. Wildlife is back. It was a long winter, and I'm so happy that it's spring. I am back out on my little trail in the woods that heads down to this swamp. This is where all those frogs were that I showed you guys last time. The sun is setting and there's a beautiful breeze, and I'm just gonna keep going with my walk. I've been dealing with some plantar fasciitis in my foot since I got back from Disney back in December. So I'm just trying not to go too overkill, but you guys know I love walking. It's really good for my mental health, and hopefully with the stretches I have and the exercises, hopefully I can get this resolved before too long. It's been like 4 months, but we'll see.
How did you get out? Mom is not happy.
No. Hey everyone, just wanted to give you a quick reading update. I filmed something yesterday, but then I realized I never hit record, so I didn't have the actual footage, so I'm going to try to refilm it real quickly here. So I just finished this audiobook that I started, and I vlogged about it yesterday when I was about halfway through it, but unfortunately I don't have that footage. But anyway, it was called Four Treasures of the Sky by I think her name is Tinghu Zhang, and this is a historical fiction book, literary fiction, I would call it, I guess. And oh my gosh, I was moved to tears by this book, you guys. This was really hard to read. It was a really good story though, and I really liked it, but I am going to try not to cry because I was like fighting tears before I hit record. So anyway, this book's probably around 300, like 350 pages, so it's not super long, but it's, you know, it took a while to get through the audiobook. Just a note on the audiobook itself, I thought it was really well done. I thought the narrator was excellent and really brought to life our main character. So in this book, we follow this young girl. Her name is Dayu. She's named after this Chinese deity or entity or some folklore figure that she really doesn't like, and she's always hated her name. But at some point, when she's around 12 or 13 years old, her parents, I'm sorry, I forgot to mention, it takes place in China. So it's based on a Chinese main character and her story. So it takes place in China, and about at the age of 12 or 13, her parents go missing, and she's living with her grandmother, and her grandmother explains to her that her parents were taken in the middle of the night for some reason. So fearing Dayu's safety, the grandmother tells her that she has no choice. She has to dress up as a boy and move to this bigger city and sort of like fend for herself because these people are going to come back and take her as well. and she doesn't want that to happen. So she sends the daughter out, Dayu, out to live now as a young boy, 13 years old, named Fang. So right away, this poor kid is like, ultimately homeless all of a sudden, is living on the streets, is trying to figure out how she can get food and survive. And she ends up finding this kind calligraphy master that sort of takes her in and gives her work. So every day she goes to the local fish market to pick up some supplies, and the fish market woman assumes that she's a homeless child, and makes a scene and threatens to call the police. But this man is there, and he kind of covers for her and says, no, this is my nephew. It's okay. You don't need to do anything or say anything. So the man offers her a hot meal. He's like, can I give you a hot meal? So she follows him, but ultimately ends up being drugged and kidnapped. And this is a whole nother new layer to the story. So she is ultimately kidnapped and held hostage for over a year, forced to learn English and forced to prepare for what's ahead. She is sent to the United States to work in a brothel as a child sex worker. It's so awful. Oh my gosh, it's so awful. Now, a point about that, since we've gotten this far, and this happens right in the beginning. It's basically on the back of the cover, so it's not anything spoilery. But I will say that the writing in this book is phenomenal. I thought that the writing was absolutely beautiful. The prose was beautiful. It's so lyrical. This is a first-time novel by this author, and she did a phenomenal job. The writing was really good. I also liked the ultimate way that she handles the story. It's devastating, but she handles it with a lot of grace, and there's not a ton of this on page like sexual violence or assault, which I really appreciated, because I know some authors do kind of get really graphic and they do it for shock value, but I did not find that this was the case in this particular story. So we follow her journey, the friendship she makes within this brothel. We follow her inner voice. She sort of, as a coping mechanism, she develops this relationship with this entity, this spiritual folklore deity that she communicates with. And this person is sort of treated as another character that comes out and helps her. And it's definitely, a psychological coping mechanism for her, but it's almost like her friend and this new character that we see helping her, sort of like a guardian angel, taking over for her when she really needs help. So I don't know how much more I should say about the plot. I guess I can mention this because it's on the cover, but she ultimately, after that part of her journey, she is able to go to a different area. This all was taking place in San Francisco. So she winds up finding herself in Idaho now, living as a man, because at the time a lot of Chinese male workers would immigrate to the United States to work on the railroads and to work out in the mines and things like that. So she does kind of find herself in a more pleasant situation, and she develops friends that take her in and care for her. But we see this rise of this horrible Chinese racism and violence that's happening within the United States, especially after the passing of something called the Chinese Exclusion Law, which I never even knew about, or I never really learned about that growing up, which is awful because it was such a big deal and a huge thing, especially out in West, where a lot of these Chinese people were migrating to. So they passed that law basically prohibiting any further Chinese people from emigrating. Now, Chinese women, I don't believe, were ever allowed to come to the United States during that time period, but of course they were being smuggled in for these brothels and this brothel work. So the story is heartbreaking, it's tragic, and getting to the end of it, though, I did feel there was a good sense of journey for our main character. And the ending words, although tragic, were beautiful in a sense of the spirituality aspect of it, but it was really hard. It was really hard to read, and to read about once again, the violence from the white Americans, white men in particular. So they were horrible people. So it was a difficult book to read. I'm getting a little teary again. But in the same sense, I feel like it was a really important story for me to read, and just to have that awareness and to have that part of history be more of a common shared memory as opposed to maybe something that only people in college might learn about through specific studies. So really amazing debut novel. I will never forget this. I will never forget this character. Definitely like 4.5 stars. There were a couple points in the book where I felt the pacing was a little bit off in the beginning, but the beginning and the ending were really fast paced, really, you know, easy to pick back up and listen to because I wanted to know what happened. There is such a sense of like adrenaline going on throughout some of these scenes, but parts were very difficult to read. So I don't know. I would say read some reviews and see if it's something that sounds interesting to you, but I'm really glad I read it, and it was just a really phenomenal read for me. So now I think I'm going to try to pick something a little bit lighter for my next audiobook. I have some mysteries that are popping up that are ready, like The Maid, Black Cake, The Guest List by Lucy Foley, so I'll probably pick one of those to start next. And I am still plodding through The Last Battle by C.S. Lewis. This book is super boring, I'm not going to lie. I just want to get through it so that I can read The Magician's Nephew and kind of be done with the Chronicle of Narnia series. So that's it for now. I will talk to you guys soon. Well, guys, it is like 6 hours later since I checked in, and I am still thinking about this book. 4 Treasures of the Sky. Oh my gosh. It's just hitting me all over again. I can't believe that story and how sad it was. And it makes me want to cry. Oh my gosh. Definitely 4.5 stars. The only reason why I'm not rating it as a full 5 stars, well, I'll explain in my roundup, but there was one element to the story where I just felt like there was one tiny aspect that I felt a little unbelievable. But besides that, incredible book, guys. If you want to read something that is beautiful but tragic, but a story of this one little human soul that goes on a journey within herself and absolutely did the best that she could. Oh my gosh. It's so sad. Oh, this beautiful sunset tonight. I love it. And the loud frogs. Okay guys, look how green everything got. It feels like it just happened overnight, but we had a few really warm days and some rain, and everything is turning green. And you can see that the buds are starting to form on the trees finally. So it is getting to be spring. Yay! Sorry, I'm out of breath. I just got done walking really fast. But anyway, in the woods here, you can see there's tons of these ramps, which are a plant similar to green onions. And I don't know, have you guys ever heard of this plant, or do you know anything to do with it? I know my sister likes to pick it and make pesto. I know you can put it on pizza, but yeah, this is like the one time of year where they come out like this, and it's everywhere. You can see it all through the woods. So that's pretty cool. Yeah, but just enjoying the beautiful sun today. It's not as hot as it was last week, but it's warming up. It was 40 degrees yesterday, so this feels really warm today. Okay guys, here's that spot I showed you earlier in the vlog where all the frogs were chirping away. Now it's pretty quiet. I did just hear 1 or 2, but yeah, it's much quieter now. Okay, so I'm just going to tell you guys 2 books I just started, and then I'm going to kind of wrap up the vlog for now, but I want to just let you know what they are in case anybody wanted to read along. So I picked up 2 new books. The first one is my audiobook, and this one is called Black Cake by Charmaine Wilkerson. I think that's her name. And I just started this, so I don't know a ton about this yet. All I do know is that the audio narrator is amazing. She's really good. She's really, really talented. Her voice is so strong and her accents are really good. So I'm really enjoying the audio so far. And I know that we follow these 2 estranged siblings named Benny and Byron, and they've come back together again after the passing of their mother, who unfortunately she passed away, but she left them this really long recording that she wanted to tell them about the story of her life and what happened to her and kind of what happened to the family. So they're kind of, it's a dual timeline. So we're seeing the present day of these 2 siblings listening to the recording. And then we're also being told the recording. So it's like set back in the 60s on some undisclosed Caribbean island. So really interesting so far. I love the references to food and culture, so that I'm really enjoying. And then the second book that I picked up was a regular book, and this one is called The Maid by Nita Prose. And this one's pretty popular, so maybe some of you guys have read this so far, but I've only read the prologue so far, so I haven't really started that one yet. So those are the 2 books that I'm going to be picking back up with in my next vlog. But yeah, definitely let me know what you guys have been up to, what you're reading, what you're watching, if you're watching anything good. I just started Ted Lasso, which is on Apple TV, and it's really good so far. It's really funny, but that's probably the only thing that I've really started watching. And other than that, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you in my next video.